Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? Good. How many of you guys, I just got to ask, how many of you guys are like in love with school right now? Like you're like, I want to go to school so bad. There's actually a few of you guys that I'm actually a little surprised about. I'm in an online class right now, and I'll be honest and tell you, it's not that fun. Like the content of it's really good, you know what I'm talking about? But then like the actual work of it, you're like, how many of you guys understand what I'm talking about a little bit? Yeah, pretty much all of you guys. Sweet. Well, hey, really quickly, okay, before we get started, okay, Winter Escape is happening, okay, February 19th and 20th, okay, February, yes. Now, listen up. Here's the dealio. Oh, yeah, look, we have a slide. Look at that. Now, 25 spots, the first 25 are VIP spots, okay? We actually already had somebody sign up this morning at like 6:30 this morning. So whoever did that, you're a rock star. Now, listen, these VIP spots, you get like, I think it's like your favorite like pop or candy. You get to cut the line every single time for anything that you want, pretty much. So, yeah, whoa, I would agree. Like, so if you guys want to register now, you guys can. It's open. If you go to our website, calvary.ch/youth, you guys can find there. You guys can register. Go under the VIP section, register yourself, become a VIP, and become awesome. So, yeah. If you don't, I mean, you're still awesome, but you're just not as awesome as a VIP. So there's that, but you know what? That's all right. So anyway, tonight, guys, we're going to be in our second week of the table. How many of you guys enjoyed that first week of the table? Yes. Anybody? Give me a shout. Come on, somebody. There we go. Good. So just like what Zane said, if I was at my dinner table, I would be talking about sports, be our world, church life. Sometimes my mom would just randomly teach me phonics when I was at the dinner table. You guys think I'm joking. I'm not. Like, she's a first grade teacher, and so like I will say like, hey, can I have like the ketchup or something like that? She's like, cat. And I'm like, Mom, just give me the ketchup. I just want the ketchup. You know what I'm saying? But she'll like randomly teach us phonics, and it's the weirdest thing ever, and I like love it and also hate it at the same time. You know what I'm talking about? How many of you guys remember like learning what phonics was? How many of you guys even know what I'm talking about? Okay, so some of you guys do. That's all right. But tonight, okay, specifically like from God's Word, we're going to be talking about like what was kind of on my heart. I'm going to be sharing with you guys one of my favorite stories throughout the entire Bible. And that is found in John 11. So if you guys have your Bibles with you or you're going to look up on your phone, go to John 11, and we are going to start from there. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a story recap here, okay? This story is about the death of Lazarus. Now, Lazarus was around, give or take, 30 years old from what we can find out, depict, and what also scholars tell us as well. He had two sisters named Mary and Martha. And one day, Lazarus became very, very sick. Now, this caused Lazarus to like be on the very, very, very sick side of it, where he was like almost on the verge of just dying. So what Mary and Martha did, since they're his sisters, they concerned about his health and they're concerned about him. They sent for Jesus. They sent word to Jesus to be like, hey, my brother Lazarus is super, super sick. We need you to come and we need you to heal him. Now, Jesus gets the news, and instead of going to Lazarus right away, he waits 2 days. Can you guys say 2 days? 2 days. Now, I don't know about you, but if I heard that like one of my friends that I love and one of my friends that like I just adore is super sick, I'm probably not going to wait 2 days to go and visit them. You know what I'm talking about? So there's a little question in that. Now, when Jesus arrives, okay, Lazarus has died, which is super sad. Can I get an aw? Aw, that was good. All right, Lazarus has died, and he has been in the tomb for 4 days, okay? He has been in the tomb for 4 days. Martha goes up to Jesus when Jesus arrives on the scene. Martha sees Jesus. She's like, all right, cool, I'm going to go talk to Jesus. She goes and talks to Jesus, and if you guys look in verse 21, she says this. It says, Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Okay, cool. So you can obviously tell like the one sister is kind of like agitated. She's like, hey, like, why weren't you here? You know, probably that side good thing. Now, Mary knows that Jesus is here as well, and so Mary goes up to Jesus, and what do we think that Mary says? It says it in verse 32. If you look there, it says, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and she saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." So we see both Mary and Martha are like, "Hey, like, Jesus, what's the deal, bro? Like, why weren't you here? Why weren't you coming? Like, where are you? My brother has died because you were not able to get here in time." So in that moment, I bet Mary and Martha were feeling a little bit about like impatience, but also about worry because they were just worried about their brother all the time while Jesus was off over here for 2 days before he actually came. And it's like weird. How many of you guys have ever like experienced worry? I would say pretty much all of us have experienced worry. Here's the thing about worry. Worry can like do things to us. It can make us like panic. It can make us just think sporadically. It can deviate our path, and we just don't know what to do when we worry. I think of worry as like a rocking chair. You guys know what a rocking chair is when you guys sit and you can just like rock back and forth? That's what I think about worry. Worry is like a rocking chair. It'll give you something to do, but it's going to get you nowhere. And I believe that's what Mary and Martha were feeling in that moment when Lazarus died. Now, I think, personally, my favorite verse throughout this entire story is verse 35. Go ahead and everybody look at verse 35. It says, Jesus wept. Now, you're like, Matthias, why is that your favorite verse? Why is that the most important or whatever? Here's what I think. I think there's 3 reasons why Jesus wept. 1, Lazarus is dead. Okay, we can clear that one off the table. That one's pretty obvious. Jesus' friend, one of Jesus' best friends, has died. He's passed away. He's been in a tomb. Okay? He's probably crying over Lazarus there. That's option number 1. Option number 2, okay? Some of you guys already know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Option number 2, okay, I'm going to say the community. Jesus is crying over the community. Now, here's the thing that I didn't explain in the beginning. When Mary and Martha were there, when Lazarus died, the community that surrounded them was just overwhelmingly like caring, compassionate, and loving. The community, they came to Mary and Martha, they wept with them, they mourned with them, they took care of them, they loved on them. And it was like this beautiful picture where Jesus probably arrived on scene, looked at the community and looked at the crowd and was like, this is exactly what I came here to do, was establish a community of loving, there's compassion, people just taking care of each other and just loving on each other. And so I have a feeling that Jesus may have shed a tear when he saw the community. Now, the third reason, which I personally love the third reason, but it's also kind of sad, is that Lazarus is going to die again. Because we all know, and we're going to get to it here in the story, where Lazarus has actually risen from the dead. But I also believe that Jesus, if you think about it, just try to picture this with me. If you were Jesus and you had Jesus' mindset and you had Jesus' like hands, feet, everything about him, and you knew that Lazarus is dead and you were going to raise him back up and you knew that later on he was going to die again, would you do that? And for me, I would be like, I don't know. Because Jesus knew that Lazarus loved him, and Jesus knew that Lazarus was a follower of Christ, so therefore Lazarus was going to heaven. So in a way, Jesus kind of robbed Lazarus from going to heaven. You know what I'm saying? So like if you think about it, it's kind of like, you know how those scenes in those movies where they're like running really slowly? You know what I'm talking about? It's like that nice slow motion. It's almost like he was running and then Jesus just like pulled him back and said, hey, no, come back. So I believe that's like the third reason why Jesus may have wept when raising Lazarus from the dead. And that begs us to ask the question, like, why did Jesus do it? Why? And the answer, he had a plan. If you guys look in verse 38 through 34, we're going to read this together, and this is going to explain Lazarus being raised. It says this, starting in verse 38, it says, Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, because he's been in the tomb for 4 days. For he has been in there for 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took the stone away. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with straps of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to him, and don't miss this, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." And when I read that last verse, that last part of 44, when it says, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go," it just reminds me of a time where like somebody came up to me and told me, "Hey, you're kind of like living and you're kind of wearing like a dead person's clothes right now." And at first I was like, "Can you explain that?" But then as I started to think about that more, I was like, man, some of us are actually walking around in our grave clothes, not living to our fullest potential or just living a life that is not there or not full. I think Jesus told Lazarus, "Take off those grave clothes and let him go," because Jesus had a plan for Lazarus, like I said before. And here's the cool thing. I don't know how many of you guys know this about Lazarus, but Lazarus was an amazing man. He was awesome. And after Lazarus was raised from the dead, he fled. And he ended up finding these two guys named Paul and Barnabas. Can you guys say those names? Paul and Barnabas, okay? Now, if you know anything about Paul, you know, Paul is Paul. Paul is amazing. He's a legend, okay? And Barnabas was also a really, really great guy as well, who kind of came alongside Paul. But the really cool thing is, Lazarus found these two, and Paul and Barnabas saw something in them, and it was like, hey, we need this guy. And what they did was, they grabbed Lazarus, and they said, hey, you're going to be this leader of this church. And so Lazarus led this church for 18 years. 18 years. And it's crazy now now that we know that, it's crazy to think back about, cool, Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead when he could have left him dead to go to heaven. He's like, actually, no, I need you back because I have a purpose for you and you're going to go do this. And I guarantee you that Lazarus would not trade that for anything. I guarantee you that Lazarus was so happy to lead that church because the blessings that happened through that church and through those people and through that community were undescribable and something that you couldn't even measure up to. Lazarus died, he was raised to life, and then he went to serve those people who needed Jesus. Because that last section right there, it says, take off those grave clothes and let him go. I believe that Jesus was also underlying saying, Lazarus, I'm not done with you yet. And I still have a lot more planned for you. And it's going to be amazing. And I feel like also that same calling that Jesus says to Lazarus is the exact same calling that he's saying to us as well. Like, insert your name. I'm not done with you yet. I have a lot more planned. It's going to be amazing. Here's the thing. Lazarus went, he led that church, and he shared his faith. He shared what he believed in. He shared everything upon that nature. And here's the thing, sharing your faith isn't easy. Like I just said, like, it's rough, it can be hard, but it's 100% worth it. You will get pushed down mentally, sometimes spiritually, sometimes physically, depending on the person you're talking to. But it's our choice if we're going to get back up and keep going with it. Here's the thing, though. The reason why it's hard is probably because Satan hates when you do it. He loves when you don't do it. He hates when you do it, though. For me personally, this last year and a half or whatever it is, one of the things that I've been really kind of studying myself is just the way that Satan works and why he works like that. And what I have found personally for me, maybe it's different for you or maybe it's the same for you, but what I have found personally is that Satan loves to throw little lies or little false items in my life or false people in my life and then just let that kind of consume me from the inside out. And so I don't know if that's the same as you or if you have similar feelings or maybe you've never even thought about that. How does Satan work in my life? Obviously, I don't want him to work in your life. You know what I'm saying? You guys are on the same page as me, hopefully. But Satan is going to do whatever he can to stop you. He's going to feed you lies about yourself, to trick you, lead you down the wrong path. He will call you out for your sin. And as the band comes up here, we're going to wrap up with a song, and I'm going to wrap up here. But it's really cool to see what Jesus does with sin. Satan knows you by your sin, and he will call you out by your sin, and that's just his nature. But the really cool thing is, Satan knows your name, but he calls you by your sin, and Jesus is the opposite. He's going to know your sin, but he's going to call you by your name. And that is something worth more than anything, because your name is worth more than any kind of sin ever combined. It's crazy. And maybe tonight, this is your opportunity to have a conversation with Jesus about the sin that maybe you are chained to, or have a conversation with your small group leader. Maybe be like, hey, I've actually never talked to anybody about this that I'm struggling with, and I think it's time. And maybe for you, that'll be a couple weeks down the road, or maybe it'll be a month down the road, or maybe it'll be tomorrow or on Friday or whatever it be. But maybe tonight is the night that you're going to take that step and you're going to be like, hey, I'm actually going to have this conversation because this sin that I'm dealing with, or this thing that I'm dealing with, is hindering me from actually going and sharing my faith with others. Because the reality is this: we can't personally, if we are collectively fighting the kingdom of darkness, we can't do that if we're still like chained to it. We cannot fight the kingdom of darkness if we are still chained to it, and that is just the reality that we live in. But it's also a good thing that Jesus breaks those chains and frees us from that sin. For some of you, I know that you kind of have a hard time believing in yourself, and I get that because I am there as well. But what we need to understand tonight is we have so much power inside of us that we can literally change anything that we walk into. This can be your school, your workplace, whatever it be. There is so much power inside of you guys, and there's so many things that God has put inside of you guys that maybe we haven't even discovered yet. I know there's a lot of things in me that Jesus has put in me that I haven't discovered yet, and I'm excited to see what those are going to be. I would love for you guys to close your eyes right now, because I want you guys to think about something. I want you guys to think about what your school, your workplace, wherever you hang out, the friends you hang out with, whatever it be, whenever you are around people, think of those places. And I want you to think about and ask yourself the question, what if everybody in that group, that school, that workplace, that park, that swimming pool, whatever it was, knew and had a relationship with Jesus? I want you guys to think about what that would look like, what that would sound like, what that would feel like. Think about the conversations you would have. All right, you guys can open your eyes. The big thing for tonight, okay, is that last one in verse 44 when it says, take off your grave clothes and go. I don't know if you guys have ever known this, but 2/3 of God's name says G-O, which is go. Because you can't spell God without go. And it's so important that we don't just play church. It's so important that we are the church and we be the church to those around us, to those in our friend groups, to those in our schools, to those in our workplace, to those in that park or wherever we hang out with. I don't know if you guys have ever thought about, like, what would you say to Jesus if you were at Heaven's Gate? I have, and I believe full-heartedly, without a doubt, that there is no sweeter sound than hearing 4 words from Jesus. And that is, well done, my son, or well done, my daughter. Because when I get up to heaven, and when you guys get up to heaven, I don't want any regrets. Man, I wish I would have talked to him or talked to her or talked to them. I want to get up there and be like, I did my job. It might not have been beautiful, but I did my job.